and I stopped because I knew that the video was changing over. Okay, but so since I'm moving a little more quickly now that I'm not uh, looking back at the notes every 5 or 10 minutes. But anyway, but I also said those things in previous videos in this playlist. I'm just kind of reviewing that. You know, people learn through repetition, which is why I always wonder when someone says, "A wise man once said," and like, why the fuck they only say it one time? People learn through repetition. But that's it. All jokes aside. um, so I am going to look at my notes now and see, what is here that I might want to emphasize. Um, okay, so there are different levels of death, different types of death slash destruction. There's a total implosion of everything in the universe, which I believe happened twice. And that in the first, second, and current third order of the universe, that God, with the capital G, was the head of all three, you know. Uh, and so, and if there is a fourth order, that I don't believe that God with the capital G would be the head of that order, and he'd be replaced with two co-gods, CO God, as opposed to KOGOD, which is the name of a liquor store near where I used to live. I said in the previous video. So, and that fourth order would be sure to implode, and that power sharing thing wouldn't work out too well. And then in the fifth order, well, Satan would be the one being from the previous orders that made it over into the fifth order. Everyone else from this order, the fourth order, and the first two would all cease to exist, including God himself. And so that said, God is making certain that this one will last. And so that the third and the fifth universal orders are the only two out of five possible that could last. And so, but I won't get into why I concluded that. It's kind of a long explanation. It's probably a couple hours just by itself. Um, and so, let me see. Well, so with God realizing this, he's going to be hard. He's going to be like a seasoned general, um, one who has been in the war on multiple occasions, or even just one long war. Um, and he's had a number of guys under him die, and so and he doesn't want to see his soldiers die. You don't win wars by your soldiers dying. You win wars by your soldiers killing the other country's soldiers. But anyway, so you can think of God as being something like a seasoned general who knows what's going to lead to death and destruction of his army, of his system, and he's taking steps to prevent that. And then, as you keep thinking about it and talking about it, then there's this character Satan. I actually don't believe God deliberately created his own adversary, and actually, I'm not even sure that the word adversary adequately describes how Satan slash Lucifer relates to God. Because in the book of Job, you see where Satan's getting permission from God to tempt Job. And then in the New Testament, Jesus tells his disciples, Satan has demanded to sift you like wheat. And then also, right after Jesus gets baptized, it says he was led by the Spirit, I assume the Spirit of God, into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. So God is actually leading Jesus to Satan to be tempted. And it seems like maybe Satan is allowed to do stuff to the general population, But when it gets to people who are special to God, then Satan may have to get special permission from God to go at this one and go at that one. Okay, that might be the case. I don't know. But anyway, there's a lot in the Bible that points toward God and Satan having maybe some type of love-hate relationship, some type of working relationship, Satan working for God. Uh, and when Lucifer turned against God and became Satan, it says that Satan was cast down to the earth. Not down to hell, not down to the lake of fire, but to the earth. Okay. So looks like God just knocked Satan out of heaven and said, "Go do your job down there on the earth." That's what it seems like. Okay, um, but yeah. So I think that God actually knows what kinds of things can go wrong in eternity, and so He's kind of using the immunization concept, if you will, injecting a little bit of a disease into society so that Jesus, the 144,000, possibly can learn from it. I imagine God is more focused on Jesus than He is on the 144,000. And I don't know, the degree to which God even addresses the 144,000. Maybe He just teaches Jesus and smacks Jesus upside the head every once in a while, and maybe He's made it the job of Jesus to actually teach the 144,000. I don't know. I can't really speak to how God does everything He does, but anyway, once God has raised up certain people to certain key positions, then He's gonna destroy this world, make everything afresh and anew, uh, cast this recreated world, and all of those who receive eternal life uh, far from heaven, further away than this world currently is from heaven, and they get to live in peace under Jesus Christ. And of course, that's kind of a simplified statement there, but for the most part, they'll live in peace under Jesus Christ, away from God, and God is basically giving us salvation from Him. He is the hard one who we need salvation from. He realizes that he's very hardcore, and he realizes that most people cannot live up to his standard, and he has said, "I'm going to give you a way to get away from me. I'm going to offer you salvation. I'm going to set up this lesser God, Jesus Christ, and then these lesser gods under Jesus Christ, 144,000, and I'm going to create a certain sense of order. And once I create that sense of order and everybody understands my laws, or my appointees understand my laws, I'm going to let you go, and you're going to be freed from me and from my tyrannical rule." That's basically, the idea that God has implemented and is implementing. But his concern is that he survive, and that we do things his way. And I said that if the stress level in the universe gets too high, then everything would implode. Well, but if God creates a limited number of people on a limited size world for a limited period of time, He can stress the fuck out of them as long as they are a small enough portion of the total population in the universe. And then after He sets them free, they can multiply it exponentially on a world that actually grows. But I'm not even going to try to figure out the science of how that would all work. But anyway, so Hades, I believe it what's the word I'm looking for? It represents multiple things, but one of those things that it represents is actually God's system of necessary evils, this immunization concept. God bringing about all kinds of evil in the world. God backing off and giving the world enough rope to hang itself. God nudging Jesus and saying, "Look at all this stupid shit they're doing down there. Look at how they can't maintain order. Look at how they can't create peace. Look at how they have a false sense of peace," and on and on. And so yeah, and that's pretty much what it boils down to is God's bringing about the worst things that can happen in this time frame, so that when He does set us free under Jesus Christ, most of us anyway, then those things won't happen in the eternal picture. Oh, and just for the record, there will be some of us who actually don't go to hell or the lake of fire or the new earth. There will be some who actually take up residence in heaven, the universal capital, and it stands to reason that some of those who served God by doing necessary evils, even if they didn't know it, uh, I mean, God has used the tyrannical leaders of other nations to punish and thereby teach His chosen people. Uh, he's used the Assyrians, the Medo-Persians, uh, the Egyptians, and on to punish His chosen people. He actually created His chosen people during a period of slavery after Joseph and his 11 brothers all ended up in Egypt. Uh, Maybe they themselves weren't slaves. I know Joseph wasn't. Um, but at some point, their descendants became slaves and they multiplied during slavery in Egypt. And that's when they became a nation, was while they were slaves in Egypt. So God has actually used other nations to punish His chosen people, and people have also said, "Well, hey, what about Judas? If Judas hadn't betrayed Jesus, then we then Jesus wouldn't have been crucified, and we wouldn't have salvation." Okay, and that's true. And some people want to point out that if Judas hadn't done it, God would have used somebody else. Okay, yeah, I get that. But in any instance, it was necessary for somebody to commit that evil in order for the process of the crucifixion to begin. Okay, so it stands to reason that God might actually reward those who did evils in order to enslave and beat and teach His chosen people, in order to beat and crucify His Son, in order to bring about salvation. So as soon as God determined that Jesus had to die a cruel death in order to bring about salvation, then it stood to reason that there would be those who would have to do evil in order for God's plan to be realized. So, so yes, there are necessary evils, and so people need to wrap their head around that and realize that God is not a sweetheart. I've said it before and I'll say it again, that people thinking that God is some kind of sweet pushover is my pet peeve. It irks the hell out of me. And I actually avoid conversation about God with anybody who I realize wants to think of him as some kind of sweet, loving God. I actually do not believe that love is the primary attribute of God. And I do believe that there are mistakes in the Bible. I don't think the Bible is 100% correct. But I believe that some of the nicer things that the Bible says are actually incorrect. Uh, and check this out. Well, I'll go there. This is not really a question of niceness versus nastiness, but Jesus was asked, well, if a woman marries a man, man dies, she marries a second man, that man dies, and she eventually has 7 husbands. In the hereafter, whose wife will she be? Jesus responds by saying, uh, there will be no marriage in heaven. You'll be like the angels, neither giving nor taking in marriage. Um, and that actually seems to be a mistake on the part of Jesus, because when you go to Genesis chapter 6, you read about these sons of God who saw the daughters of men that they were fair and took of them whomsoever they pleased. I mentioned it a few minutes ago for a different reason, but so these guys were not Ken dolls. They were anatomically correct, and their sons became giants and dwelt in the land, and then evil filled the land, and then you get the flood. Okay. Uh, and so it stands to reason, and I know I'm saying that a lot, but it stands to reason that because they were sons of God from heaven, and they were anatomically correct and having sex with the women of the world, the daughters of men, uh, the mixture of these two different types of genetics is what led to their sons becoming giants, and so there you have it. But so then when you look at what Jesus said, it's like, okay, well, these guys were supposedly from heaven, and they were anatomically correct. They had male members. As a matter of fact, God's law says, that if you don't have your male member or even one of your testes gets crushed, that you're not to appear before Him in various religious ceremonies, rituals. So, if you don't have your manhood fully intact, He doesn't even, want to be bothered with you. And so that might not be correct when Jesus said, that you'll be like the angels in heaven, neither giving nor taking in marriage. I really doubt that, and so I don't think Jesus was perfect in every way. I think that he did make some mistakes, and he was allowed to make mistakes, but those mistakes he made were not sins. He had to be sinless, not mistakeless, just sinless. Okay, and he did make it through 33 years being sinless. Okay, now if he had to live 35, 40, 50, 70 years, I don't know. Might not have been so easy to remain sinless. I'm not sure. But let me see. All right, so God is a God of necessary evils. Oh, I know what I need to say. Is that this idea of necessary evils, this idea and the idea of, well, the preceding idea of death. Necessary evils equals Hades, but then there's that preceding idea of death. So let me go back to that. Okay, I said that some things happen in multiple ways on multiple levels. So God has dealt with the total annihilation that could happen to everything in the universe, and He has prevented it with His necessary evils. But then there's the death of society in this world, or the death of society in one nation or another. And so with there being this lesser degree of death, of societal implosion, there's also a lesser degree of necessary evils, and so let me see, and so going back to the mind, this 12th sphere of thought, um, it does think about this death, this the implosion of society, the implosion of any uh, large-scale system that supports life for a lot of people, be it a national government or even a state government, uh, and something more abstract, such as the U.S. government having been the most powerful government in the world for several decades, and there are things that go with that. And I know that in a previous video in this playlist, I kind of implied that it might be an entirely good thing that the U.S. government was in control of geopolitical issues for several decades. I actually didn't mean to imply that. I thought about it later on. Actually, I thought about it even as I finished saying it, but I didn't want to do too much jumping around. So I just kind of left it alone. But I want to say here and now that the U.S. Having been the most powerful government in the world for several decades now, beginning sometime after World War II, has not been an entirely good thing. But I do believe that God has used the U.S. government to bring about necessary evils in the world in much the same way that God does other types of necessary evils and cuts Satan loose to do her thing, uh, and it's a necessary evil. But I believe that well, it's kind of like the idea that a bad government is better than no government at all. Some people have said that, and I actually believe that that idea has merit. That statement has merit, um, and so I also believe that God has used the U.S. government as his conduit for injecting various necessary evils into the world, and maybe he's almost done doing that. But let me see. So I'm actually getting close to the end of what I need to say about that. Um, and so, you know what? So it is extremely difficult to try to just sit down and take years, literal years of thought, uh, things that people just haven't wanted to talk about over the years. You kind of and just kind of condense it into a few hours. Um, but I'm working on it, and there are a lot of things that I've just had to think about myself, even though I begin my thought process about these different things, uh, either with the Bible or with current events in the world, and there are people who just can't have prolonged, intelligent conversation, and they want to have all kinds of playful conversation, and they'll talk for 2 and 3 hours uh, about a football game after it's gone off. But they won't talk for a full 30 minutes about a political issue or about uh, a scripture that comes from a book that they say they live by. They'll even get mad at you if you mention some scriptures from the book that they say they live by. There's just a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. but you know, I am calling this playlist Total Unload, and so I'm gonna try to do a total unload of some of the main things that I think about, and I'm trying to do it in a way that's at least semi-orderly. And who knows? People may not even pay attention to it while I'm still here, while I'm still above ground. But hey, anyway, you know, I'm doing what I can to just put it out there and give you something to think about, and maybe some horrific occurrence in the near future will make people want to understand what's happening in the world around them, and maybe they'll search high and low for some sort of understanding, and maybe they'll stumble upon this playlist. But I do plan to advertise it. So, and I hope that the last video that I make part of this playlist um, does turn out to be interesting enough to capture people's attention. And so I will do a little bit of a spoiler by telling you that. Wait, let me think about something first. Okay. Um, Trying to figure something out real fast. A little bit of math. Um, but that final video will be basically what I'm up to now. I've been known as a homeless advocate for quite some time, for about 15 years, and I'll do a video about what I'm up to now.